Y'all, we are just days out from the US presidential election, election day in general. Let me just say, this is not just about what happens at the presidential level. Please vote down the ballot.
Whip it, whip it, work, work, work,
What's up, everyone? This is Jalen Black, and welcome to another episode of the Black Brief, where we give your latest in politics, pop culture, and problems of the day, briefed in a very Jalen Black way. So episode 8 is going to be called Project 2025, The Realities of a Second Trump Presidency. It's election season, y'all. So welcome to another episode of our Election 2024 series and season 1 of the Black Brief. Y'all, we are just days out from the US presidential election, election day in general. Let me just say, this is not just about what happens at the presidential level. Please vote down the ballot. If you are listening to this right now, and let's say you haven't voted in 10 years, now is the time to do so. Even if your voter registration says inactive, the best thing you can do is just go ahead and vote, because a lot of times you can submit a provisional ballot. So before I even get into the politics of it, it is your civic duty to vote. And if you are a Black person like me, it is not lost upon me that being a Black woman on both ends, right? They didn't want Black people to vote. They didn't want women to vote. So I just feel like it is our personal responsibility to take advantage of this right. Because I always say, you cannot sit around and complain about these things if you're actually not doing anything about it. Politics will always do you, because that's where your tax dollars are. That is what is influencing schools and education and things like that. So please, please, please take advantage of voting in your elections and vote down the ballot. Let me give you all some numbers. In Georgia, our state house was so close to flipping, but about 10 to 15% of Democrats did not vote down the ballot. And when I say flipping, I mean taking control from the state house from the Republican side to the Democrat side. That could have happened if people would have voted down the ballot. So again, you're going to vote for either Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, or a third party. But then those local elections even have sometimes the most impact on your life more immediately. And then lastly, there's amendments on your ballot. So I just bought a house recently. So I was definitely looking at the amendments that had to do with buying a home and rates and things like that. Those are all things you can vote on. In certain states, abortion rights are on the ballot. They were able to get those ballot measures. So again, it's not just about what is going on the presidential. Please vote down the ballot. But let's talk about Project 2025. If you have not heard about it, Google it right now. Project 2025 is a very real thing. It is Donald Trump and his allies' plan of what the year 2025 and the subsequent decades of our lives are going to look like if he is elected president in November. So Project 2025 was created by the Heritage Foundation that has members that were literally in Donald Trump's cabinet. And the authors of Project 2025, Trump tries to distance himself now because it's not good for his polling. But these, to be clear, these are all people that Donald Trump has worked with in the past. They're funders of his campaign, and they're your far, far, far right conservatives that truly don't want rights for anyone. So I'm going to talk about a couple of the major points that I want people to take away from this plan. This is not a fear-mongering thing. This is actually what is going to happen if Donald Trump is to be elected in November. So let's just take a look at some of the main things and tell me what you feel about it. So before we talk about the ins and outs of Project 2025, I need us to first kind of take a step back when Donald Trump was president in 2016 and through 2020. He did some things that have never been done as crazily in this country before. So you remember he had that Muslim travel ban to tax cuts that disproportionately favor wealthy people? When have you seen us actually having travel bans against religion, you know, like these are just things that divide us as people, and it caused chaos and confusion for so many. Trump's policies, even back then, were so damaging to Americans, particularly people in Black and Brown communities. And he continues to undermine democratic norms. So if you ever hear people reference Trump as like, he is the biggest threat to democracy, believe them. Because if you read, just like a simple Google search, y'all, you will understand Donald Trump says things like, if you vote for me now, we won't have to vote again.
Christians, get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians.
Sounds like a dictator. He just said recently, reporting recently came out that he said to his cabinet members while in office, why aren't they like Hitler's cabinet members? Adolf Hitler we know who Adolf Hitler is, one of the biggest dictators of our time, responsible of killing millions. He is comparing himself to that. And he has literally promised with his own words, this isn't AI, he has promised to be a dictator on day one.
I'm going to be, he keeps, we love this guy. He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one.
The difference of if this were to be Donald Trump's first presidency versus the second is monumental, folks. I'm talking about when you are a president for the first time, sometimes you don't get certain things passed because you might not have that makeup in Congress. And by makeup, I mean, you might not have the control. So he's a Republican, or so he says, and he needs Republican control of Congress. There's things like that. But in a second term, you've kind of learned a lot of your ins and outs of like, I could do this thing without Congress, with executive action, or I could just entirely destroy this branch and I don't have to have oversight of anyone. Donald Trump it's almost like he throws tantrums like a child, but as a 78-year-old, right? So even his own campaign and people that have formerly worked with him, from Mike Pence to his head people in his term, are warning people of a second Trump presidency. One might say, why are people that are apolitical, again, outside of Mike Pence, some people that are speaking out of Trump, they just serve the president. So they serve all of our presidents, Republican, Democrat, it doesn't matter. Whoever is the president, they serve. It is those sorts of people that are saying a Donald Trump presidency will be detrimental not only to our nation, but our entire international influence of the world, and the way that he is buddy-buddy with other dictators, like in China and Russia, just people that are in complete control without any sort of democratic process to oversee them. Donald Trump is not going to be controlled by anyone if he's allowed in that White House again. And I want that to be very understood by everyone listening to this. This is not something people are saying just as, oh, what could happen. Project 2025 is a 900+ page document that they have been working on for years. One thing about the Republicans, and I always give them credit for this, is that they plan decades out. The effects of Ronald Reagan, we still feel today. This is how they're looking for the next 20 to 30 years of our lives, y'all. And again, the next president of the United States is likely going to replace the next 2 to maybe even 3 Supreme Court justices. There's many of them that are getting to the point of life where it is coming to an end, and the next president is going to replace them. So we're talking about a super majority on the Supreme Court bench that would be heavily conservative. As in, they've already rolled back rights on diversity, equity, and inclusion, affirmative action, abortion, and reproductive rights. Who knows what is next? You know? They're not stopping at anywhere logical. We're working with very illogical people. And I hate when people sometimes want to talk about our current state of politics like we're referencing like a sensible Republican. Donald Trump, and this is why you'll hear the term MAGA Republicans, this is a completely different Republican Party that is not sensible. So you're not going to negotiate with them on these things. So back to Project 2025. I wanted people to understand these are actual realities. There's, again, 900 pages. There's not enough time to talk about every single thing, but here are a couple things that I wanted people to know. We're talking about Donald Trump wants to slash the federal workforce by a third. The federal workforce. That's, again, I want to break this down just so people can really understand what we're talking about here. We're talking about slashing departments like the Department of Education.
We're going to take the Department of Education, close it. I'm going to close it.
Here's what bothers me about that. So let's say you have a liberal city, let's Los Angeles, San Diego, and they just decide we're going to get rid of that history. We got new history. This is America built off the backs of slaves on stolen land. And that curriculum comes in.
Then we don't send them money.
That is the center of all of our education for the entire country. He wants to slash it. One might say, oh my God, why slash education? Donald Trump and his cronies are a part of that sort of rhetoric that they don't want people to talk about slavery because it was bad for them. They don't want people to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion because, oh, if we give people the same rights, maybe that'll take our rights away. They don't care about that. They don't even want that taught in school. So when you see things like book banning that's already happening, Project 2025 is going to be another layer just to completely slash departments in our federal government. Because again, he's trying to make this just be people that are loyal to him. Not a lot of people that, and I used to work for the federal government, a lot of people that have worked in federal government, like your longtime senior people, have worked there for years. Again, a lot of these people work under any administration, Republicans or Democrats. They work for the country, they work for the president. That is not party specific. Donald Trump is like, if they're not going to give me my way, has to go. We're talking about Project 2025 is going to impact you unless you are extremely wealthy. I'm talking about as an individual making at least over $500,000, at least. That's just like that's like the very short end. But again, let's say you make over $500,000. You then the next step, if you are non-white, if you are a woman, if you are a member of the LGBTQ plus community, if you live in the South, if you live in areas that are prone to more climate change and climate destruction, and the list goes on, if you identify in any of those, it is going to affect you. Project 2025, it absolutely will. Part of the plan too is a national abortion ban. So we've been talking a lot about abortions and things like that on the Black Brief. You can tell I'm very passionate about it. What is happening in states with abortion bans when women clearly have been dying? It's been reported. Read about Amber Thurman and Candy Miller. Again, we did a podcast episode on that already. Read about the women in Texas. Read about women in Louisiana, all across, particularly in the Southeast. That is going to be the reality in the nation. So those of you who might be listening to this, and let's say you're in a more liberal leaning state, like a Minnesota, like a California, like a New York, and maybe you don't think you're on the front lines of the impact of these things, a national abortion ban at 15 to 20 weeks, it doesn't matter, is going to be detrimental. I cannot stress that enough. And then, so gutting just protections for LGBTQ people. And again, you might say, well, I'm not in the community. I bet you love somebody that is in the community. So it's like, we can't just always say, oh, this won't have anything to do with me. This won't have anything to do with me. Project 2025 is going to have to do with 98% of Americans. Because again, we're talking about a small margin, wealth, race, class, all those things, you might be affected less. But for most just everyday people, it impacts you. Let me tell you, as a society, I think the way that we judge and really have a makeup of what is going on in the health of our society is how we're funding public things like education, like food, like things that are required, housing. When those things are slashed and in this case dismantled, what does that mean for society? I think it's just so contradicting when we want to say, oh, we want to tackle crime and, combat crime and things like that. When people don't have any opportunity to ever be great in their lives, they resort to crime. You cannot stop crime after it happens, right? You have to start crime before it happens. And that is investing in schools. That is investing in community centers to give kids, students, a chance to believe in themselves, learn their passions, learn how they want to be a productive member of the society. Unfortunately, when we talk about a national abortion ban and some people being in the worst, dire healthcare positions of their lives, and then on top of that, let's say, someone has an unwanted pregnancy. What is going to happen to those babies, those children, when they are born and they're literally unwanted? They're unwanted. And then some pro-lifers are the main ones speaking out about abortion bans that have killed people. How are you pro-life when this has ended life? Doesn't make sense. So Project 2025, I encourage everyone to look at this and to understand all the misinformation that you might hear about this election. Project 2025 is not that. Donald Trump cannot segue his way out from being attached to Project 2025 because it was literally authored by people in his administration, people who has advised him, he has worked with. The Heritage Foundation is about as far right as you get with the Heritage Foundation. Look them up. They don't care about you and I. So you all, I cannot stress enough how it is not a game to vote in this election. I don't want to have the conversation 20 years from now and say, dang, they were right. Like I was thinking about all the things. Oh, Trump gave the stimulus checks. Did you know Donald Trump did not even want to give stimulus checks? It was Congress, a Democratic-leaning Congress at the time, who said, we are in a disaster right now. People are dying. We don't have vaccines. People need something to compensate or try to compensate losing their employment and income. Donald Trump didn't want to do that. People want to talk about, oh, well, the economy wasn't as bad in 2016 and 2020. Obama said it the other day. Yeah, it was Obama's economy.
The reason some people think, well, I don't know, I remember that economy when he first came in being pretty good. Yeah, it was pretty good because it was my economy.
Again, the way economic trends work, you don't always see the impacts of these decisions to years later. That's how federal regulations work. So again, Project 2025 is a very, very real thing. And I don't want people to say, oh, well, it's probably one of those things. They're just trying to convince me to vote. It's a 900-page document that wasn't just worked on by any lunatics. These are lawyers. These are judges. These are people who actually believe that you and I should not have rights in this society. There are some people that actually believe that women should not be voting. I saw a story just the other day. There's a woman in Covington, Georgia, 82-year-old white woman, and she voted for the first time because she said her husband always told her he didn't think that she should vote. Her husband died last year, so this is her first election that she voted in for the first time at 82 years old. Come on, y'all, wake up. Please vote, please vote, please vote. Let's not talk about the what is. It is what is, and what is Project 2025. So let's have Project Resilience and not let this happen. I'll talk about for problems of the day. I mean, there's many problems, right? But a little bit of it is also political. How is food high and contaminated? Y'all, just about every week now, we have a new recall on food. And you might be wondering, gosh, I don't remember all these recalls. Some of you might be like, oh, there wasn't recalls under Trump presidency. Donald Trump, again, let's Google. Google is very free. Donald Trump gutted federal regulations of food in his term, which means instead of having the same regulations that you need to make sure you're approved, make sure it's safe, make sure it can be sold to people, some of them aren't there anymore. So now you're having recalls of food right now. We recently had recalls of quarter pounders. There was a recall of Boar's Head meat. Again, groceries are already expensive. So now you're talking about the expensive groceries I'm buying and it's also contaminated. I could die. Donald Trump and elections have consequences. And then lastly, let's talk about pop culture, y'all. I just love the way celebrities are speaking out right now about politics. Some people are like, oh, these $1 million celebrities, like, what do they know about my life? But for them to be saying, hey, y'all, this isn't a game, it reaches people in ways that no matter how many political ads and text messages it's not reaching people, they're reached by people that they listen to, that influence them. So a couple, of course, Plies. We talked about Plies. I love me some Plies.
So those were 5 things that Kamala just released that she's doing specifically for black men. So to be fair, I told you I would read hers, and then after I read hers, I would read the things that Trump has proposed that specifically he wants to do for black men. So about to read you Trump's song right now. There you go. I just read it. there you have it. So I read you Kamala's, I read you Trump. So, I guess, my job is to just try to give you the information.
But also, Lil Scrappy just said something the other day that I thought really resonated. He was talking about how we're just getting wrong info about the race.
Oh yeah, we ain't read the stuff, but it's all good. No, it ain't all good. Like, we got to read it so we'll know what's going on. So we'll be informed about what we talking about, because everybody be talking, right? But as I see, like, people thought Trump gave them money. Right. So I'm like, well, when did Trump give you some money, bro? Like, Trump ain't got that much weight. Ain't no president got that much weight. You know what I'm saying? But I can tell that my people are ignorant, but I ain't gonna call them stupid.
So,
you know what I'm saying?
So instead of calling them ignorant, you decided to say, hey, I'm pressing them on this matter, but on the meanwhile,
yeah, we need to be looking
let's
this
go
up.
undo this ignorance.
Because everybody going off he say, she say.
Yeah.
They not going off, oh, I know the law. I know. They end up talking about Kamala Harris did it. Kamala, who told you that? Who told you that? Where you see it at? Because you showed it and read.
And that's very intentional, y'all. Republicans and these far-right groups have invested in disinformation, and they're running and have ran ads for the past couple years on channels like YouTube, on podcast episodes, and things like that. They can run whatever. And if you're not fact-checking, hey, is this thing real that they talked about? You'll believe anything. I think a lot of times disinformation spreads not only because technology makes it quicker, but because there's people that literally don't know how to read, and there's people that refuse to just read and to understand that some of this stuff is straight up lies. They're lying on black men. They're lying on how black people, how we see each other, how we see the world, all because they want to cause division because it ultimately helps them. A divided people is what they want, and they want us to feel our own infighting from things that they are spreading into our communities, y'all. Wake up. John Legend just gave a great story about how him and his wife had to experience an abortion, not because they wanted to have one, but because she was having a miscarriage. And abortions and miscarriage are performed in the same way. It was after 15 to 20 weeks, and that is why they were having complications.
My wife, she was well past 15 weeks when she had to have an abortion. Mm-hmm. She was miscarrying and bleeding out, and all these things were happening.
Her life was in danger.
Her life was in danger.
These are real things that are affecting people every day, and I want people to stop playing around, stop giving into rhetoric, and just read for yourself and make an informed decision as a voter. But would you look at the time? I also forgot my watch again today. But this has been another great episode of The Black Brief, Episode 8, Project 2025, The Realities of a Second Donald Trump Presidency. Have a great one and see you next time.